A group of former casino mechanics just broke their NDAs to reveal which slot machines are mathematically designed to destroy your bankroll. What they're sharing about these 12 specific games could save you thousands of dollars. And the casino industry is scrambling to contain this leak. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly which machines are programmed to take your money faster than any others on the floor, and why the odds are even worse than the casinos want you to believe. Let's get into it. Wizard of Oz. Ruby Slippers is manufactured by WMS Gaming, and it trades heavily on nostalgia for one of the most beloved movies of all time. The game features Dorothy, the Yellow Brick Road, and all your favorite characters from the classic film. But beneath that comforting exterior lies some truly predatory programming. Industry insiders report that Wizard of Oz Ruby Slippers operates with a base game RTP of approximately 87 to 89%, depending on how the casino configures it. That's already concerning, but the real problem is the multi-tiered bonus structure that seems designed to confuse and disappoint players. The game has several different bonus features: the Glinda bonus, the Winged Monkey bonus, the Emerald City bonus, and the Road to Emerald City feature. Having multiple bonuses sounds great in theory, but mechanics explain that this variety is actually working against you. When you trigger a bonus, which happens roughly once every 120 to 150 spins according to programming data, the game randomly selects which bonus you'll play. The problem is that some bonuses pay significantly better than others, and the game is weighted to give you the worst ones most of the time. The Emerald City bonus is generally considered the best, with potential payouts of 100 times your bet or more. But mechanics reveal that you'll receive this bonus maybe 15% of the time. The other 85% of the time, you're getting bonuses that typically pay between 15 and 40 times your bet. What makes this particularly frustrating is that you've likely spent well over $100 in spins to trigger that bonus, only to win back $25. The math is absolutely brutal, but the nostalgic theme keeps players engaged and willing to accept these terrible returns. One mechanic shared a story about an elderly woman who played Wizard of Oz Ruby Slippers every week for nearly 2 years. She loved the movie as a child and found comfort in the familiar characters and music. Over those 2 years, based on her playing patterns and bet amounts, she likely lost somewhere in the neighborhood of $35,000. The saddest part is that she genuinely seemed to enjoy herself. The emotional connection to the Wizard of Oz brand made the financial losses feel less important. This is exactly what these branded machines are designed to do: use nostalgia and emotional attachment to make you overlook the mathematical reality that you're being systematically drained. Casino mechanics specifically warn about any heavily branded slot machine. The licensing fees that companies like WMS have to pay for using these properties are always passed directly to players through reduced RTPs. You're literally paying extra to lose money on a theme you love. Dragon Link is a series made by Aristocrat, and Golden Century is one of the most popular versions. The game has an Asian theme with dragons, gold coins, and traditional symbols. It features the hold and spin mechanic that's become ubiquitous in modern slot design. Technicians report that Dragon Link Golden Century has a base game RTP hovering around 86 to 88%, which is poor, but not the worst we'll see on this list. What makes this machine particularly dangerous is how the hold and spin feature is structured to create false hope. The feature triggers when you land 6 or more coin symbols. You then get 3 respins, and landing additional coins resets your respin count. According to programming documentation, this feature is designed to trigger approximately once every 90 to 110 spins. Here's where the manipulation comes in. When you trigger the feature, the vast majority of the time, you'll start with exactly 6 coins and then fail to land any additional coins during your 3 respins. The feature ends immediately, and you collect whatever was on those 6 coins, typically around 10 to 20 times your bet. Every once in a while, maybe one in every 30 or 40 features, you'll start to collect additional coins. Your respawns keep resetting, and you begin to fill the screen. These bigger features can pay 200, 300, or even 500 times your bet. And when someone hits one of these, everyone in the vicinity notices. This creates a powerful psychological effect. Other players see that big win and immediately think, that could be me. They don't see the 35 disappointing features that player probably triggered before hitting that one good one. They only see the excitement and celebration of the big win. One former mechanic described a situation involving a group of friends who came to the casino for someone's birthday. They decided to take turns playing Dragon Link Golden Century, passing the chair around and cheering each other on. Over about 4 hours, the group collectively put roughly $5,000 through the machine. They triggered the hold and spin feature probably 30 times during that session. Most paid very small amounts. One person hit a decent feature that paid around 250 times the bet, maybe $500. The whole group celebrated like they'd won the lottery. But when the night ended, the group had collectively lost about $3,800. That one decent feature had created such a strong positive memory that they all left feeling like they'd had a great time and done reasonably well. The mathematical reality of their massive collective loss was completely overshadowed by the excitement of that single bigger win. Mechanics warn that Dragon Link Golden Century is designed to trigger features frequently enough to keep you engaged, but rarely pays enough to actually put you ahead. You're constantly feeding money into the machine, while occasional moderate wins trick your brain into thinking you're doing better than you actually are. China Shores is manufactured by Konami, and it's been a staple on casino floors for years. The game has a simple Asian theme with stacked symbols and a straightforward free spins bonus. Many players consider it a classic, but mechanics who have worked on this machine for years say it's one of the most quietly devastating games in any casino. The base game RTP for China Shores can be configured as low as 85%, which is shockingly bad. What makes this particularly insidious is that the game's simple, classic presentation makes players think it's fair and straightforward. There's no elaborate progressive jackpot system to distract you, no complex multi-level bonuses, just a simple game with free spins. The free spins bonus triggers when you land 3 or more scatter symbols. Industry data suggests this happens approximately once every 80 to 220 spins. If you're betting $1 per spin, you're spending roughly $200 just to see the bonus. When the bonus does trigger, you typically get 5 to 15 free spins with some symbols stacked more frequently than in the base game. Mechanics explain that the bonus usually pays between 20 and 60 times your bet, so you spend $200 to win $40. The math is catastrophic. What makes China Shores particularly effective at taking players' money is its reputation as a classic, reliable game. Players who've been gambling for years remember when China Shores first came out, and they have nostalgic feelings about it. They trust it in a way they might not trust newer, flashier games. But that trust is misplaced. The game's simplicity isn't a virtue. It's just a different way of hiding terrible odds. Without all the bells and whistles of modern slots, you might think you're getting a fairer game. You're not. You're just getting a different presentation of the same house edge that's working against you. One technician shared a story about a regular player who exclusively played China Shores for over 3 years. The man considered himself a serious slots player and preferred China Shores because he felt like it was less gimmicky than newer games. He kept detailed records of his sessions. After 3 years, he reviewed his records and calculated that he'd lost approximately $58,000 on China Shores. He was devastated. He'd convinced himself that because the game was simple and classic, it must be fairer than the new flashy machines. The reality was that he'd been losing money just as fast, if not faster, than he would have on any other game. Casino insiders warn about China Shores because its reputation as a classic game creates a false sense of security. Players think they're making a smart choice by avoiding newer, more complex machines, but they're just losing money in a less flashy package. Buffalo Gold is made by Aristocrat, and it's a sequel to the extremely popular Buffalo slot machine. The original Buffalo was known for high volatility but decent long-term payouts. Buffalo Gold, however, is a completely different animal, and not in a good way. Technicians report that Buffalo Gold has a base game RTP around 85 to 87%, significantly worse than the original Buffalo. The game uses the same general theme with buffaloes, eagles, and other wildlife symbols, but adds a gold coin collection mechanic that fundamentally changes how the game works. During the base game, gold coin symbols can land on the reels. These coins have values attached to them, and if you collect enough of them, you trigger a bonus feature. This sounds like it adds value, but mechanics explain that it actually makes the game much worse for players. The gold coin mechanic is designed to create near misses constantly. You'll frequently land 2 gold coins when you need 3 to trigger the feature. Your brain registers this as almost winning, which creates motivation to keep playing. But those near misses are programmed into the game. They're not random bad luck. They're intentional design meant to manipulate your psychology. When you do trigger the bonus feature, either through gold coins or through scatter symbols, you get free spins. But mechanics reveal that the free spins in Buffalo Gold pay significantly worse than the free spins in the original Buffalo game. The volatility is still high, meaning you can occasionally hit a big win, but the frequency of those big wins has been reduced. What makes Buffalo Gold particularly problematic is that it trades on the reputation of the original Buffalo game. Players who loved Buffalo assume that Buffalo Gold must be similar or better. They don't realize they're playing a significantly worse version of a game they trusted. One mechanic described a situation with a man who had been playing the original Buffalo for years with reasonable success. When Buffalo Gold appeared in his casino, he immediately switched to it, thinking it must be an improvement. Over the course of about 18 months, he played Buffalo Gold almost exclusively. His losses accelerated dramatically compared to his experience with the original Buffalo. After 18 months, he'd lost approximately $42,000. When he finally looked at his player card statement and compared it to his records from playing original Buffalo, he was shocked at how much worse his results were. The man felt betrayed. He'd trusted the Buffalo brand and assumed the sequel would be at least as good as the original. Instead, he'd been playing a machine with significantly worse odds while thinking he was making a smart choice based on his previous positive experience. Mechanics specifically warn about Buffalo Gold because it's a perfect example of how casinos exploit brand loyalty. They take a trusted name, attach it to a worse product, and count on players not realizing the difference until they've lost significant money. Lightning Link is another series from Aristocrat, and High Stakes is marketed as a premium version with bigger bet requirements and supposedly bigger payouts. The game has a luxury theme with diamonds, gold bars, and other symbols of wealth. but mechanics say this is one of the most deceptive machines in the Lightning Link series. The base game RTP for Lightning Link High Stakes is around 86%, which is terrible for a game that requires higher minimum bets. Mechanics explain that the high-stakes branding is used to justify requiring players to bet more money per spin, but the returns don't justify the increased risk. The game uses the hold and spin mechanic like other Lightning Link games. You need 6 or more special symbols to trigger the feature. Programming data suggests this happens approximately once every 100 to 130 spins. But here's the critical issue. The minimum bet required to play Lightning Link High Stakes is typically much higher than standard Lightning Link games. On a regular Lightning Link machine, you might be able to play for 50 cents or $1 per spin. On high stakes, the minimum is often $3 to $5 per spin. So you're spending $300 to $500 between feature triggers, and when the feature does hit, it typically pays the same relative amount as the standard games, around 20 to 50 times your bet. What makes this particularly predatory is the psychological framing. The game is called High Stakes and has a luxury theme. Players assume that because they're betting more and playing a premium version, they must have better odds or bigger payout potential. Neither is true. You're just losing money faster because you're required to bet more per spin, while the RTP and payout structure remain terrible. The premium branding is purely marketing, meant to make you feel like a high roller, while your bankroll disappears at an accelerated rate. One technician shared a story about a businessman who regularly visited the casino after work. He had disposable income and liked the feeling of playing higher stakes. When Lightning Link High Stakes appeared, he gravitated to it immediately. The luxury theme and high-stakes branding appealed to his self-image. Over about 8 months, he played Lightning Link High Stakes regularly, usually 2 to 3 times per week for a few hours each session. His minimum bet was typically $5 per spin. Based on his playing patterns, he was putting roughly $4,000 to $5,000 through the machine each week. After 8 months, he casually mentioned to another regular that he'd probably lost around $80,000 on that machine. He said it almost like it was no big deal, just the cost of entertainment. But the technician who overheard this conversation knew the truth. If that same player had been playing a standard Lightning Link game with lower bet requirements and the hook, same playing frequency, his losses would have been a fraction of that amount. The high-stakes branding had convinced him that larger losses were normal and expected because he was playing a premium game. In reality, he'd just been losing money faster on a machine with the same terrible odds as cheaper versions. Mechanics warn about Lightning Link High Stakes and similar premium branded games because they exploit players' desire to feel like high rollers. You're not getting better odds or more exciting gameplay. You're just being required to bet more money on the same bad mathematics. Wheel of Fortune is one of the most iconic slot machine brands in casino history, and Triple Extreme Spin is IGT's attempt to modernize the classic. The game features the famous wheel bonus that made the original so popular, but mechanics say this version is drastically worse than the original Wheel of Fortune games. The base game RTP for Wheel of Fortune Triple Extreme Spin can be configured as low as 84%. That's shockingly bad for such a recognizable and trusted brand. But what makes this machine truly problematic is how the wheel bonus is structured to create massive disappointment. The wheel bonus triggers when you land 3 wheel symbols on the pay line. According to programming specifications, this happens approximately once every 250 to 300 spins. If you're betting $2 per spin, which is common for this game, you're spending $500 to $600 just to trigger the wheel. When you finally trigger it, the iconic wheel appears, and you get to spin it to determine your prize. But here's what mechanics reveal. The wheel is weighted heavily toward the smallest prizes. The spaces on the wheel that look equal in size are not equally likely to be landed on. The game's programming determines the result before the wheel even spins. The vast majority of the time, around 80%, you'll land on a prize worth 25 to 75 times your bet. So you spend $500 in spins to win $100. The math is absolutely devastating. But because you got to spin the iconic wheel and there was anticipation and excitement, your brain registers it as entertainment rather than the massive loss it actually represents. The wheel has larger prizes, including some that can pay 1,000 times your bet or more. But these are extremely rare. Mechanics estimate that you'll land on one of the large prizes maybe once in every 100 wheel spins. And remember, you have to trigger the wheel in the first place, which takes 250 to 300 spins. So you might play 30,000 spins before hitting one of the big wheel prizes. What makes Wheel of Fortune Triple Extreme Spin particularly insidious is how it exploits the trust and nostalgia associated with the Wheel of Fortune brand. People have fond memories of the original Wheel of Fortune slots, or of watching the TV show. They assume this game must be fair and fun because of that positive association. One mechanic described a retired couple who played Wheel of Fortune Triple Extreme Spin together every Saturday for over a year. They'd take turns spinning, and when the wheel bonus triggered, they'd both stand up and watch together. It was a bonding activity for them, something they looked forward to all week. After about 14 months, the husband mentioned to another player that they'd probably lost around $30,000 on that machine over the past year. But he said it with a smile, saying it was their entertainment budget and they enjoyed it. The mechanic who overheard this felt genuinely sad because the couple had been manipulated by the trusted brand into accepting enormous losses as normal entertainment expenses. Casino insiders specifically warn against Wheel of Fortune Triple Extreme Spin because it represents one of the worst examples of brand exploitation in the slot industry. IGT took one of the most beloved slot brands in history and attached it to a machine with absolutely terrible odds, counting on players' positive associations to blind them to the mathematical reality. Game of Thrones Slots is manufactured by Aristocrat and uses the license from one of the most popular TV shows of the past decade. The game features all the houses, characters, and iconic imagery from the series. For fans of the show, it seems like a fun way to engage with a franchise they love while gambling. But mechanics say this is a textbook example of how licensing fees destroy player value. The base game RTP for Game of Thrones ranges from 85 to 88% depending on which version of the game you're playing and how the casino has it configured. That's brutal, and the reason is simple. Aristocrat has to pay substantial licensing fees to HBO to use the Game of Thrones intellectual property. They don't absorb those costs. They pass them directly to players by reducing the RTP. The game has multiple bonus features based on different houses from the show. Stark, Lannister, Baratheon, and Targaryen. Each house has its own bonus game with different mechanics. This variety sounds appealing, but it actually makes the game worse for players because some bonuses are significantly better than others. When you trigger a bonus, the game randomly selects which house's bonus you'll play. Programming data shows that the game is weighted to give you the worst paying bonuses about 70% of the time. The Targaryen bonus typically pays the best, but you'll only get it about 15% of the time when a bonus triggers. What makes this particularly frustrating is that the bonus triggers relatively frequently, about once every 100 to 120 spins. So you're constantly triggering bonuses and hoping you'll get the good one, but you almost never do. You keep getting the lower paying bonuses that typically pay 15 to 35 times your bet. The psychological impact is that players feel like the good bonus is always just around the corner. They think, I keep getting the Stark bonus. Eventually, I'll get the Targaryen bonus and win big. But the game is programmed to disappoint you repeatedly, and the rare occasions when you do get the good bonus aren't enough to overcome all the losses from the bad bonuses. One mechanic shared a story about a huge Game of Thrones fan who was thrilled when the slot machine appeared in his local casino. He'd watched the entire series multiple times and even had merchandise at home. Playing the Game of Thrones slot felt like an extension of his fandom. He played the machine regularly for about 10 months, usually 3 to 4 times per week. He triggered hundreds of bonuses during that time. The vast majority were the lower-paying house bonuses. He hit the Targaryen bonus maybe a dozen times total, with most of those still paying relatively modest amounts. After 10 months, based on his bet sizes and frequency of play, he'd probably lost somewhere around $25,000. When a friend asked him about it, he said it was worth it because he loved the show and the slot made him feel connected to it. The emotional value of the license had completely blinded him to the financial reality of his situation. Mechanics warn that all heavily licensed slots are terrible value for players. Whether it's Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead, or any other popular franchise, the licensing fees mean you're always getting worse odds than you would on a non-branded game. You're literally paying extra to lose money on a theme you love. Ultimate Firelink is a series from Bally Technologies, and Volcano is one of the newer additions. The game has an erupting volcano theme with gems, fires, and dramatic animations. But mechanics say Volcano might be the most psychologically manipulative game in the entire Ultimate Firelink series. The base game RTP for Ultimate Firelink Volcano is around 86%, which is poor. But what makes this machine truly dangerous is what technicians call artificial urgency design. The game is programmed to create a constant feeling that something big is about to happen, even when it's not. Here's how it works. The main feature is triggered when you land 6 or more fireball symbols. When this happens, you get a hold and spin game where you try to collect more fireballs to win prizes. The feature triggers fairly frequently, about once every 60 to 80 spins, which sounds good. But mechanics reveal that the game is designed with what they call escalation programming. As you collect fireballs during the feature, the animations and sounds become increasingly dramatic. The volcano starts rumbling, smoke appears, the music builds. Your brain interprets all of this as meaning you're about to win something big. In reality, the programming has usually already determined that you're going to win a small amount. The escalating drama is purely psychological manipulation meant to make you think you're building towards something significant. Then, when the feature ends and you've won 15 times your bet, there's a cognitive dissonance between the epic presentation and the tiny payout. What makes this particularly effective at keeping players engaged is that every feature feels like it could be the big one. The game creates artificial urgency and excitement, even when the math says you're about to win almost nothing. Your emotional experience doesn't match the financial reality. One technician described a player who became almost addicted to Ultimate Firelink Volcano specifically because of this escalation programming. The player described the game as giving him an adrenaline rush every time the feature triggered, even though intellectually, he knew most features didn't pay well. This player visited the casino 2 to 3 times per week for about 7 months, playing Ultimate Firelink Volcano almost exclusively. The constant artificial urgency kept him coming back. He was chasing the feeling of excitement the game created, not actual profits. After 7 months, he'd lost approximately $18,000. When he finally accepted that he had a problem and stopped playing, he told the mechanic that he knew the game wasn't paying well, but he couldn't stop himself from playing because the features were so exciting. The psychological manipulation had overcome his rational understanding of the mathematics. Mechanics specifically warn about Ultimate Fire Link Volcano because it represents what they see as an unethical advancement in slot design. The game is engineered to hijack your emotional responses and create feelings that don't match reality. You feel like you're winning or about to win, even as you steadily lose money. Zeus Unleashed is made by WMS Gaming, and it's part of their Greek mythology-themed series. The game features Zeus and other gods from Greek mythology with elaborate graphics and multiple bonus features. But mechanics say this machine has one of the most deceptive volatility structures in the industry. The base game RTP for Zeus Unleashed is around 87%, which is already concerning. But what makes this machine particularly problematic is how the volatility is programmed to create extreme swings that are mathematically designed to keep you playing longer while draining your bankroll. The game has high volatility, meaning long dry spells between wins followed by occasional larger wins. In theory, high volatility isn't necessarily bad. Some players prefer it because of the potential for bigger wins. But mechanics explain that Zeus Unleashed takes this to an extreme that's genuinely predatory. Programming data shows that the game can go 300, 400, or even 500 spins without any significant win. During these dry spells, you might get occasional small wins that are less than your bet amount, but nothing substantial. If you're betting $1 per spin, you can easily lose $400 or $500 during one of these dry spells. Then, suddenly, you'll trigger the bonus feature or hit a big base game win that pays 200 or 300 times your bet. You win back a couple $100 and your brain floods with relief and excitement, but you just lost $400 to win back $250. You're still down $150, but the emotional experience of that big win makes you feel like you're doing okay. What makes this particularly insidious is that the big wins are spaced out just enough to keep you playing. Just when you're about to give up after a long dry spell, you'll hit something. Your brain interprets this as proof that persistence pays off, when in reality the game is programmed to give you just enough to keep you hooked while ensuring you lose overall. One mechanic shared a story about a man who kept a detailed spreadsheet of every session he played on Zeus Unleashed over 11 months. He tracked every spin, every win, every loss. He was convinced that by tracking patterns, he could identify when the machine was about to pay. After 11 months and thousands of spins tracked, he reviewed his data and found absolutely no predictable pattern. The machine had given him enough big wins to keep him playing, but overall, he was down approximately $33,000. All his tracking and analysis had been meaningless. The game's volatility structure was simply designed to manipulate him into playing longer. The man said the most frustrating part was that he'd convinced himself he was being smart and analytical by tracking everything. He thought he was approaching gambling strategically, but all he'd really done was document his own manipulation in spreadsheet form. Mechanics warn about Zeus Unleashed because its extreme volatility structure is specifically designed to exploit human psychology. The long dry spells create desperation and determination, and the occasional big wins create relief and excitement. Together, these emotions keep you playing far longer than you would if the wins were more evenly distributed. Even though the end result is the same, you lose money. Quick Hit Platinum Plus is manufactured by Bally Technologies, and it's part of the long-running Quick Hit series. These games have been around for years and have a reputation as reliable classics. But mechanics say Platinum Plus is the worst version of Quick Hit ever released, and many players don't realize how much worse it is than the original Quick Hit games. The base game RTP for Quick Hit Platinum Plus can be configured as low as 83%. Let me repeat that, 83%. That means the casino is keeping 17 cents of every dollar that goes through the machine. That's absolutely catastrophic for players and possibly one of the worst RTPs of any major slot machine currently in casinos. What makes this particularly deceptive is that the game looks and feels like other Quick Hit machines. It has the same general format, the same symbols, the same Quick Hit mechanic where landing multiple Quick Hit symbols pays progressives. Players who have enjoyed other Quick Hit games assume Platinum Plus must be similar. They don't realize they're playing a version with dramatically worse odds. The trusted Quick Hit brand creates a false sense of security that makes players more willing to accept losses because they believe they're playing a fair, established game. The progressive system in Quick Hit Platinum Plus makes the situation even worse. The game has multiple progressive jackpots: Quick Hit, Jackpot, and Mega Jackpot. To be eligible for the larger progressives, you need to bet a certain amount per spin, typically the maximum bet. Most players bet max thinking they need to be eligible for the progressives. But mechanics explain that the progressives are programmed to hit so rarely that you're almost certainly never going to win them. Meanwhile, by maxing your bet to chase the progressives, you're losing money on the terrible base game much faster. It's a perfect trap. Terrible base game RTP combined with progressive jackpots that encourage you to bet more to chase prizes you'll never win. You're losing money fast while thinking you're making the smart play by betting maximum to be eligible for the jackpots. One mechanic described a regular player who had been playing original Quick Hit games for years with reasonable results. When Quick Hit Platinum Plus appeared, he switched to it immediately, assuming it must be an improved version. The word platinum made it sound premium and valuable. Over 13 months, this player came in 3 to 4 times per week and played Quick Hit Platinum Plus almost exclusively, always at maximum bet to be eligible for all the progressives. His sessions typically lasted 3 to 4 hours. Based on his playing patterns, he was probably putting $60,000 to $80,000 through the machine over that 13-month period. Near the end of that 13 months, he had a conversation with another regular player and mentioned that his results had been terrible lately. He couldn't understand why he was losing so much more than he used to on the original Quick Hit games. He thought he was just having bad luck. A mechanic overheard this conversation and wanted to tell the player the truth. It wasn't bad luck. He was playing a version of Quick Hit with dramatically worse odds than the original games he remembered. But casino employees aren't allowed to discuss RTP with players. The mechanic had to stay quiet and watch this player continue to lose at an accelerated rate. Mechanics specifically warn about Quick Hit Platinum Plus because it represents what they see as a betrayal of player trust. Bally took a respected brand name, attached it to a machine with possibly the worst RTP of any major slot, and counted on players not realizing the difference until they'd lost substantial money. Star Wars Battle for the Galaxy is manufactured by IGT, and it uses one of the most valuable entertainment licenses in the world. The game features characters, vehicles, and scenes from the Star Wars films with elaborate animations and sound effects. For Star Wars fans, it seems like a dream come true, but mechanics say this is one of the worst licensed slots ever created, and the Star Wars brand is being used to hide truly terrible odds. The base game RTP for Star Wars Battle for the Galaxy ranges from 84 to 86% depending on configuration. That's terrible, and it's a direct result of the massive licensing fees IGT has to pay to Disney for using the Star Wars property. Those costs are entirely passed to players through reduced payouts. The game has multiple bonus features based on different aspects of the Star Wars universe. A lightsaber battle bonus, a space battle bonus, a Death Star assault bonus, and more. Each bonus has different mechanics and different potential payouts. But like other multi-bonus games, this variety works against players. When you trigger a bonus, which happens approximately once every 140 to 180 spins according to programming data, the game randomly selects which bonus you'll play. The bonuses have vastly different payout potential, and the game is weighted to give you the worst bonuses most of the time. The Death Star Assault bonus typically pays the best, with potential payouts of 150 times your bet or more in the best scenarios. But mechanics report that you'll only get this bonus about 10 to 15% of the time when a bonus triggers. The other 85 to 90% of the time, you're getting bonuses that pay 20 to 50 times your bet. So you spend 150 or 180 spins betting to trigger a bonus, and then you get one that pays 30 times your bet. If you're betting $1 per spin, you spent $150 to win $30. The math is horrific, but the Star Wars theme and exciting animations distract you from this reality. What makes Star Wars Battle for the Galaxy particularly problematic is how effectively it uses the license to manipulate emotions. When Darth Vader appears on screen with his breathing sounds and Imperial March theme, when lightsabers clash, when X-Wings fly across the reels, your brain releases dopamine because you have positive associations with Star Wars. These emotional responses make you feel good even when you're losing money. The license is literally being used to hijack your emotional state and make losses feel less painful. You're paying for the privilege of being emotionally manipulated while your bankroll disappears. One mechanic shared a story about a father who brought his teenage son to the casino specifically to show him the Star Wars slot machine. The father was a huge Star Wars fan and wanted to share that with his son. They played together for about 2 hours, taking turns and discussing the Star Wars references in the game. The mechanic observed this interaction and felt genuinely conflicted. On one hand, it was sweet that they were bonding over something they both enjoyed. On the other hand, the mechanic knew that over those 2 hours, at their bet size, they'd probably lost $400 to $500. The Star Wars license had made that massive loss feel like quality time together. After they left, the mechanic looked up their player card data and confirmed they'd lost just over $450 in that session. The father and son had no idea. They'd been so caught up in the Star Wars experience that they hadn't paid attention to their actual financial results. Mechanics specifically warn about Star Wars Battle for the Galaxy and all premium licensed slots because the licenses are always funded by reducing player returns. You're not getting a better game because it has Star Wars on it. You're getting a worse game that uses your love of Star Wars to make you accept terrible odds. After all the terrible machines we've discussed, you might be wondering what could possibly be worse. Coyote Moon is manufactured by IGT, and it's been on casino floors for years. It doesn't have a famous license. It doesn't have progressive jackpots. It doesn't have elaborate bonus features. What it has is quite possibly the worst combination of low RTP and predatory design of any slot machine in widespread use today. The base game RTP for Coyote Moon can be configured as low as 82%. That's not a typo. 82%. The casino is keeping 18 cents of every dollar. That's absolutely devastating for players and represents what mechanics describe as the bottom of the barrel for slot machine returns. But the low RTP is only part of what makes Coyote Moon so problematic. The game's design is intentionally misleading in ways that make players think they're doing better than they actually are. The game uses stacked symbols, which means entire reels can be filled with the same symbol. When this happens, it creates the visual appearance of a massive win. Your screen fills with the same symbol, and your brain interprets this as a huge payout. But mechanics explain that the stacked symbols are weighted toward the lower value symbols. So your screen fills with the low-paying coyote symbols, and you win 15 times your bet. It looks like a massive win, but it's actually tiny relative to how much you've been betting. This creates a psychological effect where you feel like you're winning frequently and substantially because of the visual drama of stacked symbols, when in reality you're steadily losing money because those wins aren't actually large enough to overcome the terrible base game RTP. The free spins bonus in Coyote Moon triggers when you land 3 or more scatter symbols. Programming data suggests this happens approximately once every 200 to 250 spins. If you're betting $1 per spin, you're spending $200 to $250 to see the bonus. When the bonus triggers, you typically get 5 to 20 free spins depending on how many scatters you landed. During free spins, the stacked symbols appear more frequently, which creates lots of visual excitement. But the bonus typically pays between 25 and 80 times your bet according to payout data. So you spend $225 in base game spins to trigger a bonus that pays $50. You just lost $175 on one bonus cycle, but because the bonus was visually exciting with lots of stacked symbols and dramatic animations, your brain doesn't fully register the massive loss you just took. What makes Coyote Moon the #1 worst machine according to mechanics is that it combines the lowest RTP we've seen with design elements specifically created to mask how badly you're losing. Other terrible machines at least have some hook, a progressive jackpot, a famous license, frequent features. Coyote Moon has none of that. It's just a machine with terrible math hidden behind misleading visual design. One mechanic shared what they described as the saddest case they'd ever seen involving Coyote Moon. A woman in her 50s played this machine almost daily for over 3 years. She wasn't wealthy, she worked as a waitress, and this was her form of entertainment after work. Over those 3 years, based on her playing patterns and bet amounts, she'd put approximately $150,000 through Coyote Moon. Given the RTP configuration the casino had set, she'd likely lost around $27,000 over that time. That's a catastrophic loss for someone working as a waitress. The mechanic said what haunted them most was that the woman genuinely seemed to think she was breaking even or losing slowly. The visual design of the game, with its frequent stacked symbol wins and dramatic free spins, had completely masked the mathematical reality that she was being systematically drained of $27,000 over 3 years. When that mechanic finally left the casino industry, they said Coyote Moon was the machine they were most glad to stop working on. Every time they had to service it, they thought about that woman and countless others like her who were being deceived by the intentionally misleading design while suffering losses they likely couldn't afford. Casino insiders specifically warn about Coyote Moon above all other machines because it represents the worst of slot machine design. Rock-bottom RTP combined with visual tricks specifically engineered to prevent you from realizing how badly you're losing. If you see Coyote Moon on a casino floor, walk away. There are literally no worse options available. So now you know all 12 machines that casino mechanics say you should avoid at all costs. These aren't just games with bad odds. These are machines specifically designed to take advantage of human psychology, exploit trusted brands, and keep you playing longer while draining your bankroll faster than you realize. The best advice from every mechanic who spoke out? Set strict limits before you play. never chase losses, and understand that every single one of these machines is programmed with a house edge that guarantees the casino wins over time. The elaborate themes, exciting sounds, and frequent features are all carefully designed distractions from the mathematical certainty that you're going to lose money. Subscribe for more insider information about casino tactics they don't want you to know.